Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Small Talk. If you have been watching my channel for a while, I don't have that many subscribers, but the few that I have, if you watch my videos regularly, if you remember, I was making a series of video on banking, currency, and finance, and Federal Reserve, and State Bank, and IMF, and all that, and, 9 yard. And I obviously stopped in between because things came up and I wasn't able to make my next video. I had described what the problem was with the Federal Reserve, what the problem is with the State Bank, um, what is the problem with IMF, and why Federal Reserve should not exist, why the central bank should not exist, how we should, how it's affecting our economy, and how we're paying the price for all these institutions in the long run. And my next video was going to be the solutions of all these problems. And I also spoke very briefly, not briefly, actually in detail about banking industry and how banking system works and how banks rob common men like you and I who are not at the top 3 or 5%, whatever the percentage is now. I didn't check the recent numbers. So that being said, with the corruption that the banking industry has been doing to the human being, because a common man doesn't know all the ins and outs of the banking industry, I wanted to share two solutions to the problem. And if you remember, I spoke about Islamic banking and Islamic lending, and I told you what the problem was with Islamic lending. If you remember my last video, just a small recap. At least when I spoke with one of the Islamic financing individual, they said, well, there are two ways you can finance. First, he said you can will buy the property from the bank that you have loans with right now. And then my house was $150,000 that I purchased it for. And they said, we'll value it at $130,000. And then you agree that your house is, that you're borrowing that much money from us, which you're really not. They're only paying $150,000 to the bank that I had loan with. And they were going to have it mortgaged at $300,000. So it's priced high, which means there's no interest that I'm paying, which I was ready to do it, but thank God my husband told me, no, we're not doing it. That's bull and that's bull. And when I spoke to the guy, he was like, well, one is chicken, one is halal, one is haram. So it's not like and you kind of have to figure things out. And I told my husband, but it's chicken, one is halal and one is not halal. So let's just do it. And I was like, no, that's haram chicken and that's haram chicken as well. So might as well stick with the haram that you have right now. Don't go and eat another haram chicken on top of that. So he didn't let me do it. And then a few years later, I realized that yes, that was pretty dumb. They just replaced interest rate with the rent, kind of. And the rent that they were charging was a lot higher than the interest rate that I was paying. So they basically took the conventional banking or conventional mortgage and they rubber stamped it with the name Islamic financing, and they're selling it to the customers. The people who are getting it, they have good intentions. May Allah bless them for their good intentions. But these Islamic banking individuals, they obviously are trying to, na'uz deceive Allah or deceive God. And that's not Islamic finance at all. So where's the solution to all these problems? So I'll give you two solutions, and those are not from me. One of them, I have a spiritual teacher, a religious teacher that I follow a lot, and it was his idea, and he claims that he sent this idea to Malaysia, and Malaysian government is actually working on it to have the country interest-free nationwide. And the idea is, he said that we should start Sadqatbank. And what is Sadqat? Sadqat is a charity which we as a Muslim give to the ones who are more vulnerable in the society. One form of charity is zakat, which is one of the mandatory pillar of Islam. We have to do 2.5% of our wealth to those who are needy in the society every year. And then we can do extra charity on top of that, but 2.5% is the minimum. It's mandatory. We have to do it. If we don't do it, it's a sin for us. Whereas the voluntarily charity is something that we can do it and we get the reward for it, but if we don't do it, we will not be questioned for it, so to speak. But lots of the Muslims, they like doing extra charity if Allah has blessed them with the wealth. And his that's his opinion and his idea, and he says that we should establish Sadqatbank, and he gave this from the Quran, and he said, I studied the entire Quran, and there was lots of ultimatums and warnings to those people who were involved in riba and interest-based businesses, and there was not much how to get rid of it, except that there was an ayah in the Quran where Allah says that God decreases riba and he increases charity, which means charity will cancel riba or interest. So, and then he gave a business model for these Sadqatbank, and business model is as follows. He said, people who donate money to individuals or to large companies, they can contribute money and establish a banking system where all these wealthy ones, the top elites of the society, will donate money, and that money will be lent to individuals. For example, if a businessman comes and he needs money, let's say they need $50,000 in loan, so you will write off that loan interest-free. You will, of course, use their property or their business as collateral, just like with every other bank, because you're using charity money, which doesn't belong to the bank. Bank doesn't, that's not bank's money. It's money that people gave to those who need it. So you will have their property, their business, their car, whatever they're financing as collateral. So you will hold a lien against their, whatever collateral they use. So in case they don't pay you back, then you can go ahead and get your money from them, and that's perfectly legal. That's not haram in Islam. The only thing that's haram is getting excessive money on top of the money that you lent to somebody. So you will do the proper paperwork, you will hold a lien against their property, against their business, against their car, or whatever the case may be, and you will lend them the money. They will not pay any interest, and they will pay a monthly payment every month. And once they're done paying it, you tell them, this was our charity bank. If you are willing to donate some money towards the charity bank so we can keep helping others, we'll appreciate it, but no obligation. And then it's up to them if they want to donate more money. There will be processing fee, and there will be loan writing fee and all those things. That's not riba. That will be extra income which will go towards those employees who are working for the bank. At least your salaries will be taken out of that. Also, when we put deposits into the bank right now, let's say you have $1 million and you made a deposit into the bank, and bank pays you a little bit of interest on it. So in Islam, we're not allowed to take any interest, but we cannot keep that money inside the house either, because that's not very safe. So what charity bank will do, that they will say, okay, we will protect your funds. You open a deposit account with us, and we will charge you a monthly maintenance fee for protecting your wealth. It's for those Muslims who are really willing and are ready to go riba-free financing. They will be happy to pay the minimal fee, which these banks charge you a fee to open a bank account with them anyway, unless you're a high net worth client. If you have $1 million, they won't charge you a fee. But if, let's say, you have a few $1,000s in the bank, they definitely charge you a fee. They charge you a fee to, like, a monthly maintenance fee and all that stuff. But now, the Sadqat bank will charge that monthly maintenance fee to everybody, regardless of how wealthy they are. So more money the bank is protecting, the fee will be a little bit higher, not lower, and because they're taking a high risk in protecting your wealth. Similarly, they can have safe deposit box where you can put your valuables, and bank will collect some fee to protect your valuables. That's not riba. They're charging a fee for service which they're providing to you to secure your wealth. So all those extra income that's coming to the bank, that will be to at least pay for their expenses, pay their employees, pay their electricity bill or whatnot it could be. And then you request every depositor, every borrower, that at the end of your term, we'll appreciate if you will donate some money to our charity bank. And depositor will say, we'll appreciate if you can donate some money to our charity bank, on a yearly basis, or, whatever the case may be. And he said that he presented this idea to Malaysian government, and that government is working on it, and they have been able to implement it in few of the cities, and the system is running successfully because there are lots of Muslims in the world who are loaning to have a product which is riba free, because all of these Muslims have read this ayah about, which is very scary, that if you are involved in riba, you're declaring war against Allah and His Messenger, and nobody wants to declare war against God and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there are some Muslims who are really willing to go to any length to avoid that. That's number one. Number two, so I'll give you an example, and it's not something that's not doable. When I worked at a bank, we all know that people have been telling us that Jews lend money to other people on interest, but when they lend money to each other, they don't charge any interest. Jews who started this banking industry, they know the consequences of riba based business. So within their community, they never charge any interest to each other when they're lending money. And how do I know this? At first, it was a rumor that I heard from people, but I wasn't sure. But then I found out from authentic source. I had a client at my bank when I was a bank manager. He was Jewish, very nice guy. And he had 3 different accounts with us. One was his personal, one was his business because he was a businessman, and the third one, which had the largest deposit, that account was with us as well. And then one day I was talking to him, and I said to him, "You have, such amount of money. Why don't you talk to our financial advisor, and he can invest that money?" He was like, "Well, no, that money is for me, for my credit union, and I cannot invest that into stock market, because we use that money, that's for our members." And I said, "You have a credit union?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "But then why do you have your credit union account, money into the bank? Shouldn't you keep that money in your own credit union?" He said, "Well, it's a small credit union for the small Jewish community, and few members have contributed, so that's why we don't have our own credit union building where I can, have park this fund, so I have an account open here at the bank." So this is what they did. So there was a Jewish community center in the town where I lived, where I worked. All the members in that community center had chipped in money for their own community members to borrow from it, riba free, to start their business, to buy a house, to send their kids to school. And then once they were done, they will pay that money back, and then they will pay some more money as a token of gratitude, because they appreciate, and they didn't pay any riba on it. No interest was paid on that money. And that's Jewish, that's not even Muslims. So he had all that money, and I think he was the president or the treasurer of that credit union. So he would take the money and he would park it at my bank where I worked, and we will obviously pay him interest, because the money market had very high 4 or 5% interest rate at the time. So he was getting this 4 or 5% from, obviously in Jewish, they can, they get interest, but they don't charge interest to their own people. So they would take this 4 or 5% interest, where they had money parked in a bank, and that money belonged to their credit union, and that credit union was established based off of charity from all those members of the Jewish community center, and they will lend money to those members free of interest whenever they needed it. So it's not a business model that's not doable. That was obviously at a very small scale. But you can start a credit union at a small scale and make it big. We know there are lots of credit unions that exist in the US, but obviously their main business model is conventional banking business model, which is interest-based. But we can do a charity-based credit union. We can start off as a small community, and that's not just for Muslims. That could be Christians, Jews, atheists, Muslims. That's ethical banking, where you donate money, people borrow from it, and they pay it back. And they will pay back because you're using something as collateral. If they're borrowing to buy a house, use their house as a collateral, because if they don't pay you back the payment, they'll go through the same process as the bank does. You will auction out their home and you'll take your money. That's not wrong. That's not prohibited in Islam or in any religion. The only thing that's prohibited is the interest, the riba, that excessive amount of money, the surplus money that we charge on the money that they borrowed. So that's one of the things that my spiritual teacher has recommended, and I have seen a living example of this in a Jewish community center, at a community level, not at a bigger level. I'm sure wherever there's a huge population of Jewish people, they probably have systems in place like this. Maybe in Israel, where they live, majority of the Jews live, they probably have something like this for themselves to benefit from. That's one of the business model. The second business model is the trading bank. So in Surah Baqarah, Allah says that Allah has made riba haram and Allah has made trade halal. So banks can get involved. They can be a trading partner with the borrowers where they're sharing the profit and loss. So it's like a profit sharing business, but not only that you're sharing profit, but you're also sharing the loss as well. So if I have a financial industry where I am lending money interest free to people who come to me, let's say you want to start a business, I would make sure that I do my due diligence. I will make sure who their client base is going to be, what their marketing style is going to be, what is their addressable market going to be, what kind of business model they have, what's their business plan. I will go into much details, and I will make sure that this business is worthy of me to invest money into. And then we agree upon the percentage of the profit and loss in the beginning, so there's no surprise for the business owner or for the bank at the end. I was watching a religious scholar, Yasir Qadi had him at his, I think somewhere in one of the events, and he had invited some other religious scholar to talk about Islamic financing and banking and how riba is affecting. And that scholar, sometimes I feel sorry for these scholars who are put on the spot like this when they don't have the in-depth information of these business models. And he said, well, when you borrow money from the bank, let's say a bank charges you 2.5 or 3% interest, you can take that $100,000 and you can make that into $1 million because you're a business owner, you invested wisely and smartly, and now your business is flourishing and you made $1 million, whereas bank only gets back $150,000. So it's not fair to the bank. Sometimes it could be the other way around. You borrowed money, you invested that money, your business went to loss. Now bank wants not only its principal, but that set amount of interest or profit that it has, that you had promised to pay them back. Whether you lose money or you make money, they're going to get their profit. So it's unfair to both parties. And I was like, I'm sorry, sir. You're a wonderful scholar. You're doing a great job, but you don't understand the banking model. Banks never lose money when they lend money to somebody. Because if you have a house, which most of the people in this country, who have a house, they borrow money from the bank. If you ever look at your amortization schedule, the banks, when they lend money to you, it's not like they're charging you 2.5% per month for next 30 years if you have a 30 years mortgage. That's not how it works. They charge you annual percentage yield, and they are working on amortization schedule, which means the first 5 years, most of the payments that you make, 95% of it goes towards the interest. Only 5% goes towards the principal. So the bank takes, let's say your payment is, $3,000 per month for the next 30 years. Out of that $3,000, $2,700 almost is going to be going towards the interest, and $300 will probably go towards your principal. So bank within the first 5 years have already gotten back their principal back and some. Whatever you pay them after, that's just excessive amount of money that you're paying. So it's not like bank is losing any money. Banks never lose money when they lend you the money because they work on a very different system, and they calculate their interest and their principal in a very different way than a common man will understand. So that's where the scholar was lacking the information, and he thought, oh, it's not fair to the bank. No, it's never fair to the consumer, to the borrower. Bank is always making money no matter what. And if they don't get their money back, They auction out your property, they auction out your business, they auction out your house, they auction out your cars, and they get their money back on top of what they've already received from you. So they're always in profit. Anyways, back to my original story. So Allah has made trade halal and Allah has made riba haram. That's in Surah Baqarah. You can search up the ayah. I don't remember the ayah number. So what that means is, if we can start a profit and loss sharing business model or banking model. I wouldn't call it bank, I would call it financial institution, where when we lend money to you, we'll make sure that we are partners with you in the business, and we will do our due diligence. We'll be fully involved in the profit and loss, so that if you make money, we get a profit. If you lose money, we also face our losses, and the percentage can be written up front. So if you do 50-50, 60-40, 30-70, 80-20, whatever the percentage is, that's something that you can negotiate up front, and that's something that depends on that financial institution's business model, if that's how much percentage they want from you if they're investing money into the business. So then at that point, they won't be your conventional bankers. Rather, they will be the investors who will invest into your company, into your house, into your child's education, into your car, and they will get a share from that at the end. It's just that simple. So these are two business models that I think that we can work on. And the solution, in the beginning, it's going to seem hard, especially to those who are used to getting high interest and high return on their deposits. I mean, right now banks don't pay that much interest on the deposits either. But there were times when banks were paying 4 or 5% return, and if you have $100,000, that's like $4,000 or $5,000 a year that you make at the end of the year. But you will lose that now. Instead of you making the deposit to the bank, instead of you getting $5,000 per month, maybe you'll have to pay $1,000 a year for the bank to protect. But that's an investment towards the end, in the hereafter, in the akhirah. That's tayyib, that's wholesome, that's not permissible. That's 100% halal and tayyib, and that's what we want as a Muslim. And I know once this kind of business model is initiated, so let's say we establish a credit union, there are lots of people in this country, in the US at least, I don't know about India and Pakistan and all those places. When I go to Pakistan, sometimes it just shocks me that people have lost the sense of what's haram and what's halal, to be honest. People say, oh, well, I have this much money in the bank and I get profit every month, and that profit is good enough to pay my bills. So what is profit? Especially that's the riba, that's interest the bank is paying them on their deposits. And they're saying it wide openly. They don't even realize that this profit that they're getting, that's haram income that they're receiving from the interest the bank is paying them. So I don't know about Pakistan. I have never been to India. I don't know what Indian Muslims are doing, but I know here in the US, there are Muslims, they're practicing mashallah, and they have been trying so hard to go riba free, interest free, and they will be happy to start a banking industry or a financial institution which is interest free, and they'll be happy to donate money towards that, because the institute will get their money back, because people will have their properties, their cars, or whatever, their businesses used as collateral, and there will be liens put against them. So if they don't pay back, your financial institution or credit union will have the rights to go ahead and sell that and collect their money, their principal, no interest. So that's why it's almost a guarantee that those people will pay back, and not only that they will pay back, even if 50% of them give you a little bit extra towards the end of their term as a charity, as a sadaqah, the banking industry will grow, and eventually we can have this across in one town, then one state, and then across the country, and then maybe across the globe at some point. It's going to be obviously it's not going to be like one day plan. It will take maybe next couple of decades, or maybe 1 to 2 generations before we will become completely and 100% riba free and interest free society, and that will be the best time, I think. But we just have to put our mind to it. I would love to initiate this, but I'm the kind of person who's not very social. Not that many people know me. Not that many people would trust me. But there are people in my own community that I know, whom people trust, people respect. All they need to do is hold our hand and take us along. And I think people like me, like so many other Muslims in this country, will be happy to tag along and be the part of the process. I will be happy to help everybody if they want to do it. Start with my own community here in Pittsburgh, and then maybe grow bigger at a better scale. We'll have our children get involved. I know my kids are in college. There are so many other friends of mine whose children are, mashallah, grown-ups. They're in college. They're capable of running these kind of businesses. And once they become working professionals, they have been raised in such kind of household environments. They'll be happy to donate towards these kind of institutions where they know that we will have access to the funds which will be interest free. Those are my two solutions. I have more to come. Please give my, and both of these solutions came from the Quran. They're not driven by my own mind or my own genius head. No, none of that. And you guys can search it up and maybe put some thought into it. Please give my video a thumbs up. Please share your thoughts in the comment section below and let me know if this is something that you think you're willing to work with. And share my video with your family and friends who you think could benefit from it. Take care, be safe, and let's start a tayyib and halal lifestyle.